I post twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And I recommend you wear headphones to hear the gentle mic brushing. Alright, let's get straight to today's case. So, today we will be traveling back in time to 1920, and we will be visiting Sydney, which is the capital of New South Wales, which is a state in Australia. So, shout out to everyone from Australia. I imagine that the vast majority of people who are listening right now have never heard the case that I'm going to be sharing, because for whatever reason, it's just not highly publicized. I don't know why, because to me this case is like a perfectly planned novel. It's like that. It isn't, but it's just such a well-organized story. But in truth, it's a true case, and somebody did lose their life, so I don't want to show any disrespect to the victim or his loved ones. So, this is the case of Dorothy Mort and Dr. Claude Tozer. I hope I'm pronouncing these names right, but if not, I'm sorry. So let's start with Dorothy. She was born on November 2nd, 1885. She had a brother, a sister, and two parents. Her father was a businessman and a fire insurance adjuster. In 1909, she married a man named Harold Mort. He was from a very wealthy family, and he worked as a wool broker. And Dorothy quickly adjusted to the high society lifestyle. She hosted wonderful parties, and she was well respected in her group of friends and acquaintances. She had been an aspiring motion picture actress originally. his father was a bank manager, and he had an uncle who was involved in the sport of cricket. Now, before I say anything further, I do not know much about cricket, okay? It seems to be a very important sport in Australia, or it was at that time. I think it still is, but if you're from Australia, let me know, okay? But anyway, it seems to be a little bit similar to baseball, in that they have two teams and they have a big field, and they have something that's sort of like a bat, but it's flatter, and like a bigger ball, but it's not that important. But Claude's uncle was highly involved in this sport. I don't know if they called him a professional at it, or exactly, what the right words were, but you get what I'm saying. And he also had a cousin who was a great swimmer, so the point I'm trying to make is that he came from an athletic background. Claude's father encouraged him to play cricket, and he did take to the sport very well. He became a star batsman in high school, and also while in high school, he was given awards in literature, math, history, and Latin. Ultimately, he enrolled in medical school at Sydney University, and he continued to play cricket for them. World War I was just beginning at the time when he finished his studies, and he enlisted in the Australian Army Medical Corps. While he was away at war, he caught typhoid in Egypt in around 1916, but he recovered. In that same year, he was the victim of a bombing, leaving lots of shrapnel, some of which could not even be removed from his body. And while he was recovering, which took 12 weeks, he caught trench fever. He was very, very sick, and for some reason, somebody reported to his family that he had died, but it wasn't true, luckily, and he made a full recovery. And he continued to serve in the army until 1919. At that time, he returned home, and his plan was to go back to his career in medicine and in cricket. He had a fiancée, but shortly after he returned from war, Claude showed up after that, and he was greeted by their live-in maid who let him in. And he met with Dorothy. She was immediately smitten by him. He was said to be a very good-looking young doctor. To quote her exactly, she said, "I loved him immediately. He was so handsome and big and splendid that I thought how wonderful a son would be of his." Now Claude went home that same day after meeting her, and he said to his mother, "I don't know why God made these neurotic women." Meanwhile, he continued to go back to see her at home almost daily, and he didn't quite fall in love with her, but he was definitely feeling something for her, okay? And I forgot to mention, he was known by his cricket team as a, quote, pantsman, which is a word that means like a playboy, a guy who gets a lot of women, okay? So, anyway, he continued to come visit Dorothy regularly for the next 6 months. During that time, he wrote her 4 love letters. And here is a quote from one of them. "You have stirred me to such an extent, little lady, that you are now sitting metaphorically on a sleeping volcano. I am pretty restrained, I know, because I have tried to be for years, but for you that restraint is very nearly gone. I can't explain why." So, she had a lot of thoughts in her head about what was going to happen in the future between her and him. And her depression had lifted. She was feeling pretty well. I didn't hear of any kind of treatment that was going on in a real medical way, but they were engaged in a sexual relationship during this 6-month period of time. Now, as he started to do better and better at cricket, he realized that a scandal would ruin his career. And he decided he needed to end it with Dorothy before a scandal would get out. So, one day in December 1920, I guess it was December 19th, he told her, well, he lied to her, and he said that he was actually engaged and he needed to break it off with her. And she was caught completely off guard by this. And she was really, really hurt and really upset and betrayed and all of those things. Don't forget now, she is married, okay? And she has 2 kids. 1920, he showed up at her house. The maid was home. She brought him to the drawing room, where she gave him a gift. The gift was a photo of herself, and on the back she had written, "From the woman you swore you loved above all others and said was the biggest incentive in your life." And while he was looking at the gift, she shot him twice in the head and once in the chest. Then she buttoned his shirt over the place where she had shot him, and she turned and shot herself once in the chest. Now the maid had asked a few times if everything was okay, because she heard the shots. But Dorothy said it's fine. And then she wandered out to her own bedroom and closed the door after having shot herself. And she took a bunch of the medication that she had bought. Meanwhile, after many, many hours had passed, the maid started getting nervous. And that evening, she went into Dorothy's room and found her. Dorothy was still living. But sadly, Claude did not make it. And right away, Dorothy confessed her crime. The following day, the flags at the Sydney cricket ground were flown with half-mast. He was due to be the captain 10 days later in a big match that they were going to be having. Meanwhile, Dorothy was acquitted of this crime due to her insanity, and she was sent to a women's reformatory to receive treatment. Now, while she was in this penitentiary, she definitely got some very, very nice treatment from whoever is in charge there. She didn't have to stay in the usual jail type of cell like everybody else. She had something that was set up to look like a nice little bedroom with carpeting. She had a servant, actually, while she was there, who was one of the other inmates who happened to be an indigenous person. Her husband, who supported her through this whole mess, even though she had cheated, he sent her nice fashionable clothes that she was allowed to wear instead of the uniform. He sent her fresh flowers regularly. He paid for her to have a baker and a chef on call to cook her meals. patient.